Hello everyone and welcome to today's stream. I'm Natalie and this is Claire.
Hello.
Today we'll be talking with the filmmakers who won the Audience Choice Award from this year's London Lifter Film Festival. So without further ado, let's welcome on the filmmakers.
Hello.
Hi guys, thank you so much for joining us today. Why don't we start by finding out a little bit more about who you are and what your films were. So let's start with Elisabeth. Hi, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me today to discuss the film. It's a great opportunity. And so I directed and produced Call for a Poetic City. It's a feature documentary of 60 minutes about the stables in the center of the city in London. And I was quite ambitious about it. I wanted to prove that it was not only a poetic but a political subject, which I hope I have achieved to prove.
Amazing. Well, we'll be screening your trailer and then finding out everything about the film shortly. Olivia, thank you for joining us as well.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I'm Olivia, and I wrote, directed, and edited the short film Little Boxes about the relationship between a brother and sister as they grow up together.
Very cool. And we will be screening this film muted in the background from start to finish. So I'll be excited to see how the journey follows and asking loads of questions. And then Daniel, thank you for joining us all the way from Canada. As we can see, it's nice and early in the morning there.
Hi. I'm Daniel Oron, and I am one of the executive producers, the director, and one of the cinematographers on No Roses on a Sailor's Grave, which is a documentary feature film about the search for the lost World War II landing craft that an archaeologist does for his friend, a D-Day vet.
Amazing. I really look forward to delving further into this film as well. If you are watching and you have any questions for our filmmakers, feel free to put them in the chat room and we will pass them on and hopefully get them answered for you during the stream. Let's start with Olivia and Little Boxes. So what we'll do now is we'll move over so we can see your film playing in the background, but let's find out a little bit more about what the inspiration was behind the story. So would you like to fill us in?
So I was trying to think about what I wanted to create, and I had a lot of ambitious ideas for an extremely long film, a sort of documentary style film, and then I sort of thought, what do I know about? What is something personal to me? And I am the youngest of 3 kids. I have 2 older brothers, and I think that's something that is so simultaneously unique and relatable. Being the youngest sibling and being the oldest sibling is very common, and the relationship, I think, is very complicated and unique, and I wanted to show what it's like to have that relationship and go through the time when you're so similar and the time when you're not, and then when you're similar again. It's a really interesting orbit that I think a lot of siblings go through.
Definitely, and as you said, doing something that you know, especially in a short form project, is always a good place to start. Like, it gives you a good starting ground rather than having to go about a load of research or something like that. Because what was this project for? Was it for anything?
Yes, so this was a film I was required to make for my A-level, which is why I started with this broad, different ideas, amazing mind maps of crazy ideas. And so I had to, one of the requirements was to show the journey of a character, and I thought, what better journey than growing up, growing older, maturing, and how that affects your relationship.
Amazing.
Absolutely. So what is your background? Are you a performer, an actor, primarily a filmmaker? What is your background?
My background is in musical theater performing, so I've always been dancing and singing and acting in the kitchen or on stage. And I went to Arts Ed in London to study musical theater. It's amazing, for my 6th form. And that's where I decided to take film studies. And I had always been interested in film from being an actor and, seeing Marvel movies and Disney movies, but I never really knew that much about it. And it was such an incredible experience watching all the key films in history, from Hitchcock to Coppola to my friend sat next to me. It was amazing to see how we took these old films, these modern films, and we turned them into something we could relate to and we could create. And so that was a really exciting experience.
Very cool. So I guess one of the questions that normally would sort of come round to at the end of what are your future goals, but it seems a good place to ask then, has this project won you over, or do you want to sort of stick more to musical theatre?
Well, I'm currently auditioning for drama school programs to study acting and a few musical theatre programs, but recently I've become a lot more interested in acting for screen and film and TV, and in both behind the camera and in front of the camera. And I think it's so enlightening having had this experience of directing and editing and writing and really understanding all that goes into creating a film. And so as much as I would love to continue acting, I would also be really interested in having the opportunity to shadow a director, help an editor. It would be amazing to do all of it.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds great. And auditioning for drama schools at the moment, that must be a little bit tough. What's the process been, considering we can't meet people? Has it all been online?
So far, yes. A lot of first rounds and second rounds are online. So I've had weekends of filming monologues and filming songs, and I'll start filming dances soon to send to the schools. And in a way, it's better because it gives you the opportunity to send your best, but then
that's true.
In a way it's worse because it gives you the opportunity to send your best, so you can spend 3 hours doing it.
Okay, so we're currently seeing the credits roll up there. So this film is roughly 5 minutes long, which is a perfect time for film festivals. Anywhere between 5 and 15 minutes we always recommend to filmmakers as like the ideal short film length. As it was that short, we'll let it play around again, so we can ask questions and more technical questions about the film. So I think a good place to start is the locations. Where is this shot?
So this film was completely shot on the Isle of Man, where I moved when I was 9 and spent most of my life growing up. And I shot all the scenes in their house, in my best friend's house. I was staying with her at the time and shooting the film in her house, and her family was so kind and so amazing. They stayed out of the kitchen for like 2 days. It was really amazing of them to let me shoot there. And my best friend actually features in the film as the older Hope, which I thought was really special to me because that's who I want Hope to grow up to become. And I shot all the scenes in the restaurant bar at the Forge in the Isle of Man, which is a restaurant my brother worked at and I worked at, and I was going to another one of the restaurants every Saturday as a child in between ballet practices. And so it really feels like a family film and a home film.
Yeah, you've hit on some really good points there with one, shooting something that you know about, 2, using locations that are accessible to you, and casting within your kind of network as well. So they're the first kind of things that we always advise first-time filmmakers to do. The other thing that we always highlight to filmmakers who are about to go on to their first film is to get a cinematographer that knows what they're doing. So this is obviously shot well. Who was the cinematographer behind this?
I was.
You were? Well done.
Yeah. I took a lot of inspiration from a mix of films. I think one image that actually stuck out to me the most was from Frozen, and it's from Do You Want to Build a Snowman, when Anna is tiny and she's standing in front of Elsa's massive doors. Because I think often as a little kid, that's how I felt, like this little tiny thing wanting to be part of the big world. And I really liked the contrast in some films between the golden light and the colder light. And I really wanted to capture that with how they interact. And with the cyclical nature of the film, when we first see Bobby in the bar with his cigarette, it's a lot colder of a feel, whereas at the end we have a lot more golden light and it's a lot warmer because hope is coming back into his life, both literally and metaphorically.
Nice.
So what did you shoot on? What was the camera?
It was, oh my God, this is so embarrassing. I am not sure, to be completely honest. It was a camera lent to me by my school, and it wasn't anything special. I know that students who were staying near the school in London were lent Blackmagic cameras, but because I was taking it with me on a plane, they were a little bit reluctant to give me such nice equipment, very understandably.
Sometimes that makes it more user-friendly, though. I
Absolutely.
definitely had cases in the past when, without cinematography training, I actually messed up because of using a camera that I didn't understand.
Yeah.
So, you know, blessing in disguise
thrilled.
sometimes.
During
Yeah.
the shoot, was there any particular highlights or moments that went really well?
I think, actually, so the scene towards the end of the film when Hope walks in the doors and you have this gush of light pouring out, that was an image in my head that I just had from the beginning. There were a few of those. And I remember that day, it was the last day of filming and we were all tired, and I was sat on the floor trying to get this shot for maybe an hour, trying to get the lighting to work. And it was, you know, there were tears, there were breakdowns, but when I got it and when it came out the way I had seen it in my mind, it just felt so amazing. And being with my brother and with my best friend shooting these scenes, it just was such an exciting experience for that to be my first film and for that shot to finally work. It just felt so liberating and so exciting.
That's amazing.
Nice. So we've kind of touched upon what is next for you, and drama school is that. But alongside going to drama school and auditioning for drama school, are you working on any other films right now?
Currently, I'm not. I have a page in my notes that is ideas, and often I just have images in my brain, like with little boxes and the stacking of the boxes on the door. The images are sort of what create films for me. And so every so often I'll just like whip out my phone and be like in a completely white room with a bunch of desks and people are sat at them and they're looking at a projection of a hand. And it's just an idea and it goes there. And then when I'm not focused on auditions, that's
And I bet that comes
become a movie.
Yeah, and I bet that comes in the middle of the night when you're trying to sleep.
Definitely.
Yeah.
That's the most creative hour.
I was going to say that's the modern day equivalent of having a pen and notepad by your bedside table at night.
Sometimes
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Okay.
Great.
Cool. Is there any other questions from our filmmakers who are joining us today? Do you have any questions for Olivia? Or any thoughts you'd like to share?
I thought it was a really beautiful film. I did actually watch it. So,
Very
congratulations.
cool. Thank you,
Thank you.
Daniel. Olivia, do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share with the viewers?
Thank you. That's genuinely the first thing I thought from the moment I got the email from Film Freeway saying that my film had been accepted to moving into the second round, to all of it was just utter surprise and thanks to the people who voted for my film both times, to the people who helped me create my film, to ArtZed, to the Isle of Man, to everyone. It sounds so cliche, but just thank you.
No, thank you. And I hope you feel so proud of yourself, like completing a first project, a first film project, especially when you've done so much of it single-handedly, is quite an achievement. So congratulations.
And super good
you.
luck with all of the auditions for the drama schools. That's very exciting.
Thank
do let us
you.
know and do stay in touch so we can follow your journey as well.
I will.
But now we're going to move on to Elisabeth films. So Elisabeth, as we're on this page, why don't you tell us a little bit more about the inspiration behind your film?
So I was living in the area of Bayswater. I am living in Bayswater, and I was watching these horses, and they were crossing Bayswater Road, and I was like, "What is that?" And obviously, everyone thinks it's a tourist attraction, and no one really gives them a second look. And in fact, I started to go there, and it took me a few years before I actually decided to shoot this documentary, because I really knew them well when I did it. So actually, I didn't really research particularly because I knew them all, and I knew my subject before I decided, okay, well, I do want to do this. I want to show how important it is. And they were really struggling at the time. And the council is very difficult for them. Nobody helps them. The tourists complain that there is dust from the horses, so they shut off their tracks, and Winter Wonderland comes and they can't, all of a sudden, they can't ride in half of the park. And I was feeling, they were really battling alone while they are doing really an amazing job at many, many levels, and particularly at the community level. And I was like, okay, so nobody cares, but these things is really important, and it does fulfill a job in the city. And I thought, as a filmmaker, I think we have a sort of vocation, or maybe not everyone, but I do, to show things that maybe people don't see. So we have eyes, but we miss some things because we are bombarded by images, all sorts of images and messages. And for me, it is true that I find we receive too many messages and images that are meaningless. And then it's difficult to really see what is important around us. And somewhat a filmmaker has a sort of gift to show, look at this. You have to look at this because it has an importance, either because it is something deeper, or because it is something political. Or I truly believe that the work that these tables do is very meaningful and important at the community level and at the political level. And I wanted to share this with an audience. And thank you for showing this film.
So on that note, should we move on to the trailer?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Here it is.
So I feel that I inherited my father's dream.
Amazing.
There were some great shots in that trailer for everyone to see and to feel the tone of the piece. There's one particular shot there where we see the horse, well, I don't know how to explain it, crossing the road, but not crossing the road, but like reacting to the traffic and reacting to what is happening within the city. How many were you as a team?
So we were 5. I did it with a proper team because I've done it all alone, and personally I do enjoy very much the dialogue between the cinematographer and I do. I love to do the editor, and I think somewhat for me it does improve my work to work with people who are good and have their own ideas. I do love film. For me is a teamwork, and that really is clear. But I think it's wonderful. It's a wonderful team. It's a wonderful teamwork. It's something that is unique. When you write a book, you're alone with your page, but when you make a film, you have your team with you, and it's like a family. I mean, I think.
I think whatever section of the arts you're in it because you love collaboration. I mean, unless you're talking like fine art and you're a painter or a sculptor. But generally speaking,
leave me alone.
but generally speaking, whether it's like Olivia was talking about when you're part of like an acting troupe or in the West End, or whether it's filmmaking, it is bringing together all those amazing people with different talents and views that make things really special. Because you said that you believe filmmakers' sort of responsibility is to bring things to light for people, have you always worked in documentary? Or do you do narrative as well?
So I did a documentary in French about François Truffaut, which was a previous work, and in fact I invented that I had found the reels of a fake film of François Truffaut, and with his daughter Eva, I just wrote a 10-minute feature film that was the following of the adventure of Antoine Doinel, and I shot it in the condition of a shoot, and then I interviewed everyone and I made them lie. So it was a mockumentary.
Cool. Okay.
And it was a bit surreal.
We like documentaries.
We've seen quite a few mockumentaries come through
Recently.
last year and this year. Maybe
Yeah.
it's the relief of everything that is going on. People just need that light-heartedness.
I mean,
back in
there's
their
so
life.
much to satorise in society at the moment that I think mockumentary is a good form. Yeah. No, that sounds cool.
For me, it was more because I love the new wave. And this movement, this film movement, for me, I know that film by heart, and I have grown up in that, but I just love it, and it was a tribute, and I started, my baby steps were to look up at someone I just love the work of, like François Truffaut, and then do something that was a tribute, something that, when you look up at someone, it is stimulating. I mean, I think what is beautiful with filmmaking is that you look up at other people's work and you think, oh, this is amazing. I just love this. This makes me want to do it too, and I think this is very important.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people will be looking up to your work as well. It's done incredibly well on the festival circuit from my understanding, and you've got a live screening in the cinemas in Australia coming up.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit more about how the festival experience has been for you.
Well, unfortunately, I was really looking forward to seeing Pinewood Studios, and which is, so legendary, and I'm very frustrated. But it's been online. I find personally, I think this is not how it should be, because cinema is not being in your bedroom watching a film. It is sharing with an audience, breathing with an audience, at watching imaging together. I think it's a micro society, and we're losing this, and we're losing this on. I love Mubi. I adore Mubi, actually. I really watch it a lot because it is my family of films, and I get inspiration from it. But I do think we need the cinemas, and I hope we're not losing them, because they must have a hard time at the moment. Yeah. So for me, it's amazing to be in the cinemas and these festivals, but I miss I miss the contact, and I miss meeting people and talking face to face. It's when you meet someone, I don't know, and you breathe what the other breathes, you have a different experience.
And this is why it's so important to attend the film festivals that you get selected to, or even if you don't get selected to, but you're aiming to get into that festival, attend them, because you'll meet like-minded people, and you're, like you said, you have that same energy and same focus that you'll probably end up making a friend, if anything, and down the line collaborating. So I think you're spot on there when you say that, Elisabeth. Thank you.
So speaking of meeting people then, to go back to your project, I was going to say, you said it was a few years of knowing these people before you actually shot the documentary, which is great because you build trust. How did you then go about pitching the idea to them? Were they very receptive to the idea of you filming, or did they take some winning over?
So actually, they really are. They really are working very hard, and they have little recognition at the council level and city level. And so I really present at the time. I decided to do this because there were 2 stables and 1 shot, and nobody cared. So I just realized, wow, these things can just shut off and nobody cares. And, you know, we live in a big city. It's a cold-hearted city. It's a fast-paced city. The cars run over the horses. You should see that. They just run them over. They don't let them cross the streets. Nobody cares. Well, you have this bunch of people, quite, you know, Kirsty, and she's working with a bunch of young people that are amazing, hard work. And they do this amazing work and nobody cares. And, you know, somewhat, okay, I love London, but I know London is hard. And they're doing something for London and nobody cares. And I really wanted to show what they were doing because it's amazing. These are amazing people, hardworking, struggling to do things. And I think it's not okay to just ignore them. So that was the idea. So they were very receptive, especially because the father of Kirsty now unfortunately died, and he was really. It was the last images of him that were taken. So she was very happy that we could film him because this man has been the inspiration for the stables. And what I love the most is how he passed this passion to his daughter, and then his daughter Kirsty is clearly passing on to her son. And you know, this is how dreams can go transgenerational. I love this. I love when you have a passion and you have a dream, you make it happen and you pass it from, you know, it goes through the family. I think it's something very strong in our society. I do respect that a lot.
How did they respond to watching the film for the first time?
They loved it. I mean, one thing I was a bit upset about is that we didn't get the approval to shoot. So they do give the bonus to the Riding for the Handicapped, the association. And I wasn't able to shoot this, and I really, really wanted to shoot that because these children are not enough on screen, and it is important for me. And I wasn't able to get permission, and I'm still upset, as you can see. I'm still upset because I really, it was really something I wanted to show them. And I'm someone, I don't have a TV because I really think we are swarmed under images that have no heart and no interest. And I wanted to show them in a beautiful fashion, but I wasn't able to do that. I'm a bit annoyed.
Talking about the images and showing it beautifully, the cinematography on this documentary is fantastic. What did you shoot on, and who was your cinematographer?
We shot on an Alexa, which is a big camera, and the cinematographer was amazing, Brian Fawcett. He was amazing because he did 3/4 of it is shot handheld, and it's very heavy camera.
It's very heavy.
Yeah, he had a wig and above his head, and oh my God, he did such an amazing job. And running after the horses with the camera, I mean, we had a tough time because they were very fast, and to move around between the stables and the park, it was tough. It was really tough. But he is very gifted, the cinematographer. Some of his work has been shown at Sundance Film Festival, so I have not discovered him. He's really great, very, very passionate about what he does, very true. It's fantastic to have the opportunity to collaborate with people like that who love what they do and have very strong ideas and can give this feel. It was very important for me to have beautiful and poetic images. Yeah. And I had very strong ideas. I wanted to film it at the level of the horse. not other people. So I was very directive, but I was open to dialogue, and there was a nice dialogue between him and I. But Brian is very gifted, obviously, as you can see. And that's where I couldn't, I mean, I can knit a scene, but I'm not as gifted as him. And that's where I think it's wonderful to have a team that backs up your work and makes it better. Yeah. But I wanted to say something very important to me, which is that when I was researching the film, I watched Hell County this evening, which is a movie that was made by Ramel Ross and had an Academy, was nominated for an Academy Award. Wow. And this is he filmed it alone, you know, a bit like you. He had his camera and he just melted in the community of Black people in Alabama, and he filmed it, he edited it, and it's just extraordinary because when I saw this, it deconstructs all the rules of documentary making. And when I saw this, I was so impressed. I actually asked the crew to watch it because, you see, it freed me from making a documentary with the voiceover explaining images that actually don't need explaining. And this was very important for me, that, you know, we don't need to respect rules that TV has created. We as filmmakers, we can create our own language, we can create our own rules, and we should. And we have to fight against quite a few things to get it through. And this is why I think it's important to be able to speak and explain this, you know, in podcast, because it is okay to break rules, and we should be free. And you know, it was a battle. It was a battle for me because a lot of people told me yes, but it needs a voiceover, and I was like, no, you know, I'm not telling people what to think when images are clear enough and it can speak for themselves. I mean, we live in a society where everyone wants everything explained all the time, and this is not advertising. I don't need to sell anything.
Wow. Great idea to tell the crew to watch something that gave you a lot of inspiration for a project. I think that's a fantastic idea.
Absolutely. So what are you working on now? What's next for you?
So next is my first feature film, fiction. And, I am now, I feel that I'm comfortable with the camera and I can add actors because I felt I wanted to go step by step, and I am at the final draft of my first feature, and hopefully I will wrap this up while I am enclosed in my flat. This is a great time to write, to be honest.
Yeah.
So if you're a bit, you know, distracted, that you really have to focus on what you're doing. So it's been a good time to write for me, and I'm writing a romantic thriller on the background of light pollution. It's for me important to speak about the planet, and I always want a film to try to change people's vision of the world, and that's what I'm always trying to do as a big picture in the background of a film, while I'm trying to do an entertaining storytelling without respecting the storytelling of Hollywood. So trying to free myself from too much, you know, obligation. It's a bit hard to do that, but.
And are you looking to get sale agents and distributors on board at the early stages?
I will once I have finished the script, and I really don't want to change a comma because I'm very perfectionist, and I want to have a perfect script before I can show it. And I think I'm not very far. And yes, I would like to do that. I would like to do something in the classic way, because I do want to keep the same camera which I love. I think it's an amazing camera, the Alexa, and so I would need. It's very expensive to shoot with an Alexa, so I would like to keep. I will need to have a proper budget for that.
Yeah.
Obviously, people need to eat, and they need to live.
Yes.
That's what they do.
Well, thank you so much, Elisabeth, for sharing your story. It's been wonderful to hear your insights, and just everything that you've mentioned has been fantastic. Daniel, let's move on to your film, No Roses on a Sailor's Grave, another feature-length documentary, very different from Elisabeth's though. So I'm going to move over now so it will start playing in the background. There we go. And it's now going. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about the inspiration behind the story and how you came across this project in the first place?
Sure. So this is a bit of an accidental discovery. I run a company called Go Button Media with my partner, Natasha Ryan, and our director of development, Robin Webster, was on the lookout for talent in the realm of archaeology, discovery. We make shows for Discovery and others. And one day we discovered John Henry Phillips, who was a young, at the time, 26-year-old, I think, archaeologist, historian, huge World War II fan, and does a lot of volunteering with vets. And we were just developing sort of ideas for television. And then, months went by, and then Robin suddenly kind of came into the room one day and said, John has just made a very interesting promise, and I think you should get on the phone with him. So I did. And he revealed that he had somehow, possibly accidentally, made a promise in the heat of a moment to a 93-year-old at the time D-Day vet that he would find his lost ship that went missing after D-Day, a couple of weeks after D-Day. And I said, okay, great. Tell me more. Do you know where the ship is? No idea. Do you know how to go find it? None, not whatsoever. And I quickly did a Google search at the same time, sort of like we're all multitasking, and there's really very few references of this entire ship online. So I was like, okay, this is legit. And then I asked him if he could scuba dive, and he said, nope. So I went, great, let's make this film. And on top of that, he also had the ambitious promise that he would also build a permanent memorial in France for the ship. So off we went. We met Patrick, who was amazing, and is now 97.
Wow.
I might be watching this. Patrick, if you are, hello. And off we did. And it was a 3-year process filled with a lot of ups and downs, some incredible fortunes and misfortunes, and a pretty ambitious project. And thanks for screening it. We're excited.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of the films that kept coming back with the most votes throughout of the London festival, so we had to sit down and check it out for ourselves as well. And it's just such a heartfelt, uplifting documentary, and I feel like you hit all of the tones perfectly. So I do recommend anyone to... Is it available online anywhere?
Well, the thing is, much like Elisabeth was mentioning earlier, we released the film in February, right before the pandemic sort of shut down the world. So we had we took our time with this one, and there was no rush to get it out. So we kind of had these ambitions that it would screen live in a theater because it was shot for a big screen, and it is a very epic kind of film. And we also felt that the subject matter was just kind of different in the sense that it's not an old vet sitting propped up somewhere in a library with his medals telling a story, and then everybody else go out. It's a bit of a sort of joke, as like a road trip film between a younger generation and an older generation. And then, like everyone else, we dealt with the pandemic and sort of started to think, okay, well, do we hold back the film for 6-7 months, a year? Do we release it? What do we want to do? So long story short, we ultimately ended up deciding to go online with it. And the reason for that was primarily because of Patrick. I think there's very few vets left, right, from D-Day. And Patrick was one of the younger ones. He was 19 when he was drafted. And so we really just felt that the world needed to see this story. We felt that Patrick should have the opportunity for his story to be told while he was alive. And we're exceptionally grateful that opportunity happened. It has screened online in a number of places across the world. It has got a number more premieres coming up. in North America. And we've literally just started the film circuit maybe 5-6 months ago. So we have a lot of sort of, yay, you've been accepted, we'll let you know. Because as you probably know, a lot of film festivals are figuring themselves out.
Yeah.
Still, yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what was the vision for this from the beginning? Obviously, you said that you were developing television ideas, or did you just straight away know that this had to be a feature film?
So it was a bit of a combo. I would be lying if I said that from the minute I heard the story, I was like, I've seen this vision and now I know what we're going to do, which is likely for most of my other films and some of the other television that we make. Obviously, when we make TV, we have a client, right? Or multiple clients. So we know sort of the exact outcome of what the show is supposed to be, who it's supposed to be for, what the audience is looking for. And we find our creative ways within that to play and to tell our vision. And we try and be cinematic as much as we can with our shows. But, ultimately you have a client, you know what the show is, and you sort of have to commit in advance, which is a good thing for the TV medium, to what it's going to be. And in this case, really what happened is I went over with one camera and some audio equipment on my own and just sort of, we did a very ambitious 10-day, I think, trip between going to meet Patrick, filming a little bit with John in some historical sites in England, and then crossing over to Normandy and going up and down Normandy and sort of retelling the story. And the idea behind that was literally just to put together what we call a sizzle reel, just a teaser tape for a potential TV show. And we were using Patrick's story as a bit more of a, this could just be one of many stories in the TV format. Somewhere around the sort of 80% mark, I just was blown away. And I just remember telling my partner, Natasha, that this is really a film. And I have always been a filmmaker at heart, and I started as a filmmaker before television. So I guess it was sort of a combination of my own sort of optimistic approach that this would be a fast 6-month to year project. I didn't have any illusions that I would be like, diving in the English Channel, and we made a decision at the company. We have the gear, we have the abilities, we raised some funds, and it was definitely, like all documentaries, it was an adventure. It was not what I expected it was going to be, in good ways and bad, and that's sort of the story of how it came together. And it kept shifting throughout the making of it, right? Because obviously it was shot over 3 years, and it's each trip over, which is not a cheap thing for an independent documentary, was sort of its new adventure. It opened up new avenues for the film.
Well, one thing we haven't spoken about today at all yet is archive material. And as we can see here on screen, you've got a lot of archive
found footage,
video, photos. Was that all easy to source? Did Patrick was he able to provide you with a lot of it? Or how did you go about securing rights for some of it?
Right. So most of the archive in the film is upfront, just to tell the story of it, and then it becomes a bit more of an adventure film. The challenge is we always asked ourselves, like, how much archive do you want? Because we didn't want this to turn into a similar type TV product, and B, we didn't want it to turn into an old-fashioned, I love archive based content, but we didn't want it to turn into sort of a predictable show. And we do a lot of archive for some of the shows we make right now for some of our clients. And archive, it can be tricky, right? Because a lot of it available online is either free or usable within the realms of certain documentaries if you know how to do the right legal. And then you run into the problem where almost everything that you think online is free or coming from the right source is actually not owned by that source, or is not free, or they don't have the right to charge for it. There's a lot of complications. We have an exceptionally talented individual at our company, Rebecca, who is our post-production supervisor, who does all our archival, and she could write you a law book about it, and she's not a lawyer. The real problem with this particular project is that LCH 185 vanished from history. So there was very little, if anything, available of LCH 185, and there were very few survivors or people that knew the story of it. So there were very few people that I'm sure at some point in the 1940s, during her commission and during her voyages, people took photos of her. I'm sure sailors had photos of her. I'm sure families of sailors had photos of her, but lots of people just like, this is probably sitting somewhere in a box. So finding archive was really challenging. And in some cases, we elected to go with things that give you the idea of what was happening at the time. And we try very carefully to make sure that you don't think, oh, that is specifically LCH 185 parked in the bay next to that ship, for example, in the closing shot of the beach landings.
Sure.
Sorry, that was just going back to that road trip element of it. We just saw Patrick and John in the car, and they're just such an endearing pair. You can't help but smile when you see them both on screen together. So I have to ask, what was their reaction when they saw the final project?
So John watched it, I think, by himself the first time, because he was very excited about it. And it took 3 years for him to see anything, right? So one thing could be said about John is he was patient. As someone who is one of the, he's part of the production team, and it's obviously his story, and he is the main subject, and it was his idea, and it was Patrick that is his contact. So he was exceptionally patient to sort of wait to see something. I know I wouldn't have. And he waited until the film was complete. And by complete, I mean mixed, ready to go. He didn't see a rough cut. He didn't see a fine cut. He didn't see any of the cuts between that and the lock. He didn't see a color correction. He saw the film when it was done. And, I had a lot of nervousness around somebody wants to see this thing change, especially Patrick, when he saw it. It's not really an easy thing to change a film that is fully mixed and ready to go to the theaters.
Yeah.
And John wrote me that he was in tears, and then I think he watched it again immediately after that. With Pat, I watched it with him online because Patrick is living in England and I'm in Canada, and I watched it online with him, and it was really heartwarming. I was watching mostly nervous, just kind of riveted to the screen watching him. I wasn't even watching the film because I was just like, God, if he hates
What's his
this
reaction? Yeah.
I mean, this is a World War II vet. And I think one of the things, Elisabeth was mentioning this with the horses, when you tell a World War II story, especially somebody else's personal story, you have to have your point of view as a filmmaker, but you do have to, you hope you do justice to their story and their impressions and their feelings. And this is a really emotional film. I mean, Patrick loses one of his best friends, in the sink. Patrick ends up in the water in the middle of the night. I mean, he doesn't know where his ship is. He doesn't, 90% of the families had no idea where their loved ones are at the bottom of the ocean. And so, and it's all caught up in the mess of D-Day. And then if you think about it, Patrick later is given like a couple of weeks vacation and ends up being shipped off in submarines to the Pacific. So it's a really emotional time. And I think a lot of us today think of ourselves struggling with this particular pandemic and with world events. And I'm not remotely minimizing the impactfulness of today or the challenges that our generation faces. But when you delve into World War II, which I do a lot in some of our TV series as well, and especially with Patrick, you understand the level of complexity and the sheer sort of dramatic emotion that these people went through for years, and everyone that their families were involved with too. So I was really focused on Patrick's emotions when he was watching it. And luckily he, I asked him one question at the end, and I just wanted to know, have I done justice to your story? Have we, I know we made a good film, but did we capture the story the way you remember it and what you want? Not from a news perspective, but just from, one day when you're gone, is this what you want people to see? And he said, yeah, absolutely. It's funny because with Patrick, he always defaults to, I'm so honored. I just didn't think anyone would be interested, which is amazing because this is a man who's a hero. But he just, every time you ask him or every time he's sitting there at like a ceremony or something, he's always like, why would anyone be interested in our story? So, yeah.
Wow. So it's still doing the festival circuit. For anyone who's now watching, like, I have to see this film. What are the plans after the festival circuit? Do you have a distributor on board, or will we hopefully be able to see this on Netflix or Amazon Prime at a later stage? What is the plan?
Sure. Yeah, so we have a distributor interested. We've had a number of distributors interested. We have one in particular, one that we really like. We're in the process of figuring out with them what's the next step for the film. The film is designed for theaters in the sense that it's an 83-minute film.
Sure.
So for television, for standard broadcast, it's a little bit of a unique unicorn, and there's some places that can take that. We have discussed the idea of releasing it through just a streaming service or a movie dedicated service, which doesn't have the challenge of the hour slot.
Yeah.
We've also even discussed the idea of potentially releasing an hour-long version of it. We don't really know exactly how we feel about that yet. But yeah, there's a lot of interest in it. And I think for us, the most important thing was for Patrick and his family to, and John, who put, 3 years and a lot of his contacts and friends and, blood, sweat, and tears into it. We just wanted to justify sort of that effort. It's funny because a little side note, we're now getting little, emails or messages out of the blue from families and descendants of the survivors or the victims of 185. Just the other day, I got this beautiful request from a woman whose godfather perished on LCH 185. And she had, other than knowing that he was on that craft and other than knowing that he was lost at sea, she had no information whatsoever. And she saw the film, I believe, on Liftoff, because we promoted it through some of the Facebook groups of the survivors. And she wrote me just saying how much it's impacted her life, because she only has photos and some sketches, and just she begged, like, is there any way you guys could send me a DVD? Because I know we don't release films anymore privately for people. And I said, of course, for you, we'll send you a DVD. Just advertise this. And she wrote me saying that she will treasure this, and this will go in the collection for all of her generations and her family heritage. So in some ways, it feels like we made something a little bit bigger than a film. And there's a memorial sitting on the beaches in Lyon-sur-Mer, the beaches of Normandy, that'll be there long after Patrick is gone, long after I'm gone. And, we have Elizabeth was talking about friendships. We now have, the mayor of Lyon-sur-Mer is like sort of a best pal now. And every time we're in Normandy, we go over for dinner, and the whole town of Lyon-sur-Mer and half of the coast of Normandy was involved in the film. And it just, it feels like we made something a little bit bigger than a movie. And that to me is sort of the ultimate reward for it, more than the specific film distribution, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Amazing. What an amazing story. And thank you for sharing it.
Yeah.
Do you have any final thoughts before we round up?
I think, so I had a thought about something that was mentioned earlier about screening in cinemas. It is really missing now. It definitely feels like one of those things that we miss about being outside our apartments or our homes. However, I will say that I have discovered, when you initially get over the whole, I can't believe it, it's going to be seen on a small box and somebody's going to watch us on their iPhone, on their way to work. I have realized that that's also in some way an interesting little blessing, because so many more people have watched this film now in a shorter period of time than they ever would have if we had stuck to that sort of, well, first we want to get into this tier of film festivals, and then we want to get into this tier of film festivals, and then our distributor and us will have a conversation about what is okay for us to do. And instead, to be honest with you, we just blitzed the world and went, okay, let's screen in Australia, let's screen in Canada, let's screen into, like, who cares if it's a premiere or not? And part of that was because we wanted to do justice for Patrick, as I mentioned. But I also feel like the end result of that is it's not quite the same as a TV product, but it does have that opportunity to transfer over borders and reach people that you wouldn't have if you were taking it on the cinema tour. And because it's also a little bit more affordable, you're not sending a 35 millimeter or a DCP print everywhere. You don't have to spend $200 to enter every festival. You don't have to have that debate of, tragically, of like, do I get on an airplane for this one but not that one? I think it's a bit of a good thing now. And I think if anything, it's an opportunity for people during that lockdown to discover things that they probably wouldn't have discovered because it would only be screening at this particular festival and not in their sort of periphery.
It's great to hear that, because that's what we've been trying to say. I mean, you have to take the positives in a moment like this. And accessibility is definitely one of the ones we've seen, as well as geographic diversity. And also, what's the point in making an amazing film and nobody seeing it? like, the more eyes you can get on your work, surely that's the best thing. So yeah, it's nice to hear a positive angle on it.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you, all three of you, for sharing your stories with us here today. And it's been an absolute pleasure just getting to know you a little bit better. And as we said to Olivia, please do stay in touch with your filmmaking journeys. And if you ever want any advice, we're always on the other end of an email. So do feel free to stay in contact. Thank you again so much. And thank you for joining us on today's stream.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you so
Thanks.
much for having me. Thank you.
No worries.
Thank you so much.
Goodbye.